is happening, guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another video. We are back in the garage with the 135, the 1M clone. So I've had a lot of people ask me why I decided to take on the project of building out a 1M clone. Kind of narrowed this decision down to a few different categories, but I'll discuss the project in general and then I'll talk a little bit about why personally I decided to build this car. And before we even get into all of that, I do want to say right off the jump, this car has easily been one of the most fulfilling projects. This one is definitely my baby. I could never get rid of it. And by far, I am most proud of this project. And we're nowhere near close to done, but it was very cool to see this all sort of come to light. Okay, so you're gonna notice right off the bat that something looks a little bit strange. Yes, the front bumper is not on the car. It is back at the body shop and is actually getting repainted. I have a future video discussing all of that. So I'll go ahead and lay over some B-roll for you guys so you can see what the car looks like with the front bumper. And while we're on the topic of talking about what the car looks like, that is going to be the first thing that I'm going to discuss. It is the cosmetics of the 1M. These cars in person look extremely good, in my opinion. They're the perfect body style, the perfect generation. Not too old, not too boxy, not too new, not too modern. It's that sweet spot. The E9X and the E8X BMWs, in my opinion, were some of the best built BMWs in terms of cosmetics. I thought that they just looked the best overall. I think the F8X looks really good too, but personally, I prefer the E8X and the E9X. Now the 1Ms were just so unique when it came to the body style because you got that really short wheelbase based off of the 135 obviously, but you also got this really wide aggressive stance. The front fenders and the rear hips are modeled and are actually as wide as the E9X M3s. They are extremely wide. And if you've ever seen an E90 M3 in person, you know that those rear hips are absolutely massive. So if you take those really wide features and then you put them on a very short car, it just looks even wider. Now I know for a fact that this car on camera doesn't look nearly as good as it does in person. When you see these on the road, they look extremely wide and very aggressive. That to me has always been something that has stuck out about the 1M body. It's also just something that you don't see too often. Obviously M3s, M2s, M4s, very common. We see them all the time, at least here in Charlotte, North Carolina. But the 1M body is not something that you see all the time. I've seen maybe a handful of them my entire life. Might be different if you live out on the West Coast, but here on the East Coast, you don't see a ton of 1Ms, especially just driving around. So that was something that I was infatuated with right from the jump on the 1M clones and just the 1M in general. The second factor that went into obviously wanting to build a car like this was the cost. Anytime I'm looking at getting into building a certain car, and if I have an idea or a overall vision of how I want that car or project to turn out, I always try to calculate what that kind of cost would look like. And the surprising thing is, when building out a 1M clone, it's really not that expensive. Now I'm just speaking cosmetics. I have a lot of people who talk about, well, you didn't do the subframes, well, you didn't do the brakes, you didn't do the axles, you didn't do the differential. That is true. However, for just the looks, which is primarily what I'm talking about right now, it's not too expensive. I made an entire video talking about the costs. I'll have that link down below. Make sure you go check it out. But a real 1M is going to cost $60,000 and up. $60,000 is on the very cheap side. I've seen them go for even $80,000. It just depends on which example you're looking at. But I knew for sure I didn't want to have to buy a real 1M. I wanted to build it myself. I wanted to do the work myself. I didn't want to just go buy something. So that was sort of the difference when I got the M4 GTS. I felt like I had this really cool car, but I just bought it. I went out and just bought it with my money. This car was different because I was building it. It was something that I could be proud of in the end. I made it into something that it wasn't before. And I think that's very important when it comes to a lot of these builds. You should always strive to make something that's a little bit more unique. And in the end, you can be very proud of it and really showcase your work. If you guys are interested in all of the parts, I have them linked down below. I made an entire spreadsheet with each and every part that was put on this car as well as the costs. When I was looking for the next car to build, I was kind of coming off the heels of building another F series. I had done an F30 with the B58 in it. I had obviously done the M2 before. I had done the Supra before. I had done the E90. I had done a 328. I had done the E36 M3. I went through a lot of different cars that I just wanted to do something a little bit different. Something that I didn't see a ton of people building on YouTube. When I looked into building one of these cars, there was hardly any content out there on this. And that leads me into the second point of building this car. There weren't too many people documenting the process of building one of these cars and actually talking about what it takes to do it, as well as showing people how to put on every single part. So that was also a big factor. here. Now, a decision like that can go one or two ways. If there's not a lot of content out there on that build, it might mean that not a lot of people are interested in it. But it could also mean that maybe people are interested in it, but not a lot of people have actually shown or documented how to do it. Nonetheless, it was a car that I really wanted to build, so I went for it, and I'm really glad that I did. In the end, the finished product was something that I was extremely proud of. And besides the finishing, molding, and the paintwork, I did all the work myself, which is something to be very proud of. When I bought this 135, it did not have a motor in it. It had been sitting at CES for 2 years with a ton of just parts stacked up inside of it, no front end. It was in really, really bad shape. The paint was completely destroyed on it. It was missing all kinds of parts, so I basically had to start from scratch. Luckily, I was able to get a motor from the guys over at Straight Six Auto Group that they had at CES Motorsport. So I actually picked this car up for $5,000, and then I paid $2,500 for the engine. The rest of the stuff I sort of piecemealed together as I was building out the motor and building out the car. The other reason that I really wanted to build out this car was because I had never built a car with an N54 engine in it. I heard a lot about how people really like those motors, but your boy had never experienced it. So it was time to jump onto the N54 train and test my luck, if you will. They're not bad by any means, but it is very important to do your maintenance with an N54. Is this engine for me? Personally, no, because I have a different vision for this car. Back to not doing the M3 subframes on this car, making it a real 1M. My vision for this car, this 135, this 1M clone, is to buy an E92 M3, E9X M3 donor car and put the entire drivetrain, engine, both subframes, axles, wheels, diff, everything into this car. That is going to be going down over the winter. So once we dive into the fall, I will find my donor car, then we will start ripping this beautiful thing apart again and turning it into a V8 monster. And that is the end game for this car. Now, I also have an E92 M3, and that's kind of why I've decided to also put that engine, the subframes, that drivetrain in this, because it's hands down one of my favorite cars that I've ever owned. And I just think with this car, it would be so good. But obviously, before then, we have a lot of time to dive into the N54 and make some fun content. Right now, this does have the Mosselman twins on it. I'm running Bluetooth port injection. No, we haven't connected the reflex yet, but we do have to do that. We will do it soon. Some simple bolt-ons. The motor was completely refreshed. It is in really, really good condition. It drives fantastic. So I will have fun with this car. I will turn it up, but in the long run, this thing will be replaced with an S65. Some people are not about that, and I totally get it, but it is my car, and I want to build it the way that I want to build it. And I just think having an S65 and the front and rear subframes of this car is just going to be so good. It's going to be so good. The way that this car feels, the way that it handles, the weight distribution, and having that super linear V8, I think that is going to be the perfect combination for this car. Another simple piece to the puzzle with this car is I've always liked the interiors on the E8X cars. They're very similar, obviously, to the E9X cars. I just love how simplified they are, how low tech they are. These new cars, they pretty much do everything for you now. And I'll be honest, I don't want a whole lot to do with that. I like being in control. I like having feedback from the car. I like feeling the road. These cars still have that feeling. Your heavier steering is still there. It doesn't feel like the car is on autopilot. It's really just more of a driver's car, and that's what I enjoy out of my cars. So should you go ahead and build an E82, a 1M clone yourself? I think absolutely. If anything, it is going to be one of the best learning experiences for you. If you are newer to building cars, or you have a little bit of mechanical experience, or maybe some bodywork experience, if you go the route that I went, where I pretty much bought all of the OEM panels minus the rear quarters, it really allows you to get comfortable working on these cars, and everything is going to fit really good because it's all made for the 1M. That is the cool thing about building a little bit more rare of a car like this. All of the parts that you need to make the conversion happen exist, and they exist from BMW, so you're not going to run into fitment issues. Now, obviously, it's not going to be the cheapest thing in the world. You could just go out and buy an E92 M3 or an E90 M3 or something else if that's what you want to do. But this is more about building the car that you envision. Now, my car doesn't look crazy by any means. It almost looks pretty much stock, minus a few things. But that is just how I wanted to build it. I didn't want to build a crazy looking car. I just wanted a simple and effective car. And I think that this car, even though it does look pretty stock, I will add a few more things. It's going to be mostly about the way that it drives and the heart that's inside of the car. So hopefully that gave you guys some answers. I had a lot of people asking why I decided to go for this car, and that is why. It's been one of my, if not my favorite cars that I've ever built in my life, and it taught me more than any other car that I've ever built because I went the furthest with this car, obviously cutting up quarter panels and even making a lot of mistakes along the way. It's really just been a very fulfilling project. So if you guys are interested in any of the parts, I have them linked down below. I also have the new website, shopthickwhips.com, where we actually sell performance parts for a lot of different chassis. Tell me down below, you guys, what your favorite car that you've ever built is, or what car you want to build next, and tell me why. But that's going to wrap this video up. If you guys have any questions for me, leave them down below. See you guys in the next one. Peace.